Welcome everyone to our discussion session. Today we're diving into the differences between two serious relationship issues, gaslighting and stonewalling.
Yep, definitely an important topic. So let's start with gaslighting. What does it really mean in a relationship context?
Sure, gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse where one partner deliberately manipulates the other's perception of reality. It's like planting seeds of doubt about one's own memory and feelings, right? It causes the target to question what they know to be true.
That's intense, really. And it's not just miscommunication, it's a deliberate effort to undermine someone's mental stability.
Exactly. It's a systematic way to make the person feel off balance, anxious, and even question their sanity.
Right.
The term actually comes from the 1938 play Gaslight, where the antagonist does this in very calculated ways.
So essentially, gaslighting is like, essentially altering one's view of reality to the abuser's advantage.
Yep. And that can lead to severe self-doubt and even self-hatred. It's particularly dangerous because it sows a lot of confusion and can over time make the victim feel completely isolated in their own mind.
And what about stonewalling, though? How is that distinct from gaslighting?
Stonewalling is a bit different. Unlike gaslighting, which is about distorting reality, stonewalling is more of a defensive tactic, where one partner withdraws completely from communication.
Right.
It's like you're hitting an emotional wall, refusing to engage or, respond.
I can imagine that being incredibly frustrating for the partner trying to communicate. It must feel like you're talking to a brick wall at times.
Absolutely. Research by Dr. John Gottman even labels this as one of the 4 horsemen of relationships. When someone stonewalls, they become so detached that even if their expression seems calm, internally, they might be in a state of fight, flight, or freeze. Everything is happening under the surface.
Yes, exactly. So while gaslighting actively messes with your mind, stonewalling is more about like shutting down emotionally when things get heated.
Right. And the interesting part here is that stonewalling is a defense mechanism. Maybe the person stonewalling feels overwhelmed or threatened by the conflict. It's not as insidious as gaslighting, but it still causes serious harm by making the other person feel abandoned in the conversation.
That makes sense. And the article points out some important strategies for dealing with both behaviors, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. For gaslighting, the focus really is on addressing the emotional abuse head-on. If someone feels manipulated like this, it's crucial to seek professional help immediately. Therapy
Definitely.
or even crisis resources like calling a helpline can be vital.
And for stonewalling, they recommend taking timed-out breaks during intense conversations, right?
Exactly. When a conversation turns unproductive or emotionally charged, a timeout is necessary. Both partners need to agree to step back, process their thoughts, and then reconnect when they're calmer. It's an effective way
Right
to avoid
there.
saying hurtful things in the heat of the moment.
I do wonder, though, can stonewalling ever be misinterpreted as just needing space, rather than it being a harmful behavior?
That's a great point. Actually, sometimes stonewalling starts simply as a need for space, but the problem lies in the frequency and duration. When it becomes a constant defense rather than a rare timeout, it evolves into a barrier that stops effective communication.
So it sounds like timing and mutual agreement on taking breaks are crucial. Otherwise, it can become a persistent problem.
Exactly. And let's not forget that both behaviors, though different in manifestation, can have disastrous consequences if they go unaddressed. They both erode trust and intimacy in a relationship.
Right. In that sense, it's like having 2 different kinds of relationship predators. One works by stealth, and the other by, emotionally shutting down.
Precisely. And while gaslighting actively manipulates and distorts, stonewalling simply creates a void, a silence that can feel as painful as overt abuse.
Exactly. You know, one thing I find a bit off is when some people conflate the two. Not that they're similar, but they are both toxic. How do we, as experts, clarify that nuance?
I'd say it's important to understand intent and behavior. Gaslighting is a deliberate, calculated game where someone tries to make you question your mind. Stonewalling, on the other hand, often comes from a place of feeling overwhelmed or bombarded, though it's still harmful when overused.
That distinction really matters, especially when someone is trying to, figure out what kind of help they need.
Exactly. If you're experiencing gaslighting, professional intervention in the form of counselling or therapy is a must. For stonewalling, learning how to effectively take and manage timeouts could be a helpful tool both individually and as a couple.
Right. And it's interesting how both of these behaviors have psychological underpinnings. With stonewalling, you have that physical response, elevated heart rate, muscle tension. It's almost as if the body is saying, I need to shut down.
Absolutely. It's a classic fight, flight, or freeze response. Even though one might appear calm outwardly, the internal panic tells a different story.
Yep. Now, doesn't it just blow your mind how these patterns have such long-lasting effects? For instance, gaslighting can lead to, lasting anxiety and career impacts, while stonewalling can leave deep scars on the relationship's emotional connection.
Totally. And that's why awareness is so key. Recognizing what these behaviors look like at the earlier stages can help, prevent further damage.
Exactly, yeah. There's also an interesting angle about, how people might sometimes fall into these roles unknowingly. Not everyone who withdraws is a stonewaller by intent, and not every unintentional miscommunication is gaslighting.
Right, the context is important. For example, even if one partner is merely overwhelmed and retreats, repeated occurrences can still contribute to a toxic cycle. So, self-awareness and mutual communication are critical.
Now, I'm wondering what do we advise couples to do when these issues surface?
Well, for gaslighting, it's imperative that the affected party validate their own experiences and seek outside perspectives, like speaking with a trusted friend or mental health professional.
Yep, absolutely. And for stonewalling, it sounds like establishing a rule for timeouts could be a lifesaver. When one partner feels inundated, they can call a break, and both need to respect that need.
Exactly. It's like setting a pause button on the conversation until both can regain composure. But I do respectfully push back on the idea that just a timeout is a silver bullet. It takes a lot of practice and commitment from both sides to make it work effectively.
Definitely. That's a fair point. The timeout strategy requires both partners to be in tune with their emotional states and equally committed to reconnecting afterwards.
Exactly right. And that's why, in cases where patterns persist or escalate, professional help can offer tools and exercises, like those timeout planning exercises mentioned, in structured ways to rebuild healthier communication.
Exactly. It's really eye-opening to see how deep the dynamics of gaslighting and stonewalling can run, but also promising that steps exist to address them if both partners are willing.
Absolutely. It comes down to awareness, communication, and sometimes the courage to seek help. These are not issues to be ignored, and understanding the differences can pave the way for more healthy, supportive relationships.
Right on.